let's see. I don't believe I had installed jQuery. I don't see it. I don't believe I have it. So I'm going to install it. So npm install jQuery. So it's going to download it, and it's going to put it in my node modules directory somewhere in here. Maybe? No? Anybody see it? Oh, it's there. Okay, there it is. All right, so I'm going to copy a couple things from here. Well, actually, I'm just going to copy this over here, the jQuery JS. I'll copy that, and I'll put it under my vendors. So public vendor, and I'll create a jQuery directory. jQuery query, and I'll paste it in here. Okay. Now we'll in the lectures we'll create a jQuery lecture. jQuery, and we'll create a little template in there. So we'll say index. And what we'll do is that we'll load a couple things here. We'll load the bootstrap. So href will go up one. Let's see, what do we have here? Vendor, what do we have here? Bootstrap. I guess dist. CSS. Bootstrap main, there we go. And style sheet. There we go. Okay. The other thing we're going to load here is the script library we just installed. Right? We'll do src, go up twice to vendor and jQuery and jQuery. There we go. All right, we have installed jQuery in our page, and let's create a little app that will allow us to play around with this. We'll say we'll do script. Well, this will be source. This will be app.js. And let's just create a couple things here. We'll say h1. Well, let's put first a div class container fluid, and in here we'll put h1 welcome to jQuery. All right, there we go. So let's navigate to that page. We don't have app.js just yet. Let's navigate there. So it would be localhost. This would be lectures. It would be jQuery. There we go. Welcome to jQuery. Yes, we're in that page. All right. All right. So let's go back to jQuery and let's implement something in our app.js. We don't have anything there, so let's create a little app.js here. So say app.js. And let's keep everything in following the same good practice of putting everything inside of an iffy, right? But we don't have Angular here, so there's no Angular here. So what jQuery does is that, like Angular, it declares one global object. Okay, well, function, object, function, object. It declares the jQuery function. And you spell it just that way, and it allows us to do all sorts of really cool things, right? One of the things that it allows us to do is that it allows us to grab things from it allows us to refer to things in the document, right? So what's in the document? Let's see, what do we have in the documents? Well, we have this div and we have this h1. Okay. Well, we can grab that h1 just like that. Right. It allows us to refer to things in the document in the DOM, and then it allows us to do all sorts of things to it. Right. So, for instance, we could say remove it. Remove it from the DOM. Okay. So if we render it, it's still there. Wait, what? Oh, I know why. Let me make sure. Okay, there. Okay. So So the reason it wasn't working is that when it got to app.js, the h1 was not yet part of the DOM. Right? So when this code executed, it looked for h1 elements in the DOM. It couldn't find it, right? So it was not able to remove it. Right? But when I put it at the bottom, it says, h1 is already in the DOM. I can remove it. Right? So it's not there. That make sense? Okay. And it's actually typical to put JavaScript down at the bottom, right? Even though this is not proper HTML. Right? It's a very common thing to see, right? Only because some of these scripts are very, very heavy. Right? They're very big, right? And instead of putting it way up here and waiting for the browser to download our JavaScript, right? We would prefer for the user to see something, right? Before all the JavaScript gets loaded, right? So it's very typical to put it at the bottom, right? So nevertheless, I am going to keep it at the top. Also because it allows me to talk about a couple more things. But if I leave it at the top, we see that it's not working. Yes? It's not working. So what we'd like to be able to do is have this app.js be a little smart and say, hey, you know what? Yes, I want you to do this, but I need you to wait until the rest of the document loads. Once the rest of the document loads, go ahead and do whatever you need to do. Right? So to do that, jQuery has that function, this function here. Notice that it takes a string. See that? That function, the jQuery function, takes a string. But it can take other things as arguments too. It can take a function as an argument, right? A function taking a function as an argument, right? And this jQuery function is very smart, right? Depends on what you pass it, it behaves one way or another. If you pass it like this, it'll say, "Oh, you want me to call this function when the DOM is all done, right? When I'm ready to go. Okay, when I'm ready to go, then I can do what I want to do, and I can put all my transformations or all my code in there." Yes? Right? So if I refresh, notice that now it works. Right? Before it wasn't working. What it's doing now, it's waiting for the DOM to load, and when the DOM is done, it will invoke that function we told it. Right? This function, we can call it whatever we want. A very common name is init. Right? That works too. Something that you will see a lot in the documentation, in the examples, is you'll see that this function, the name of that function, they don't use a name of a function. They'll use an anonymous function. So you'll see this many times. Right? And no name for the function. So the whole function, right, embedded in the function call. You see that? I find that really hard to read, okay, especially coming from Java, coming from other object-oriented languages. But this is a very, very common thing you'll see in the documentation. Okay, everywhere you have all these things. Also, what you'll see in documentation is that because developers are lazy, and a good developer is a lazy developer, 6 letters are very, very tiresome to type. Especially one of them is a capital letter. So we have an alias for this jQuery function is the $. Now, we just said type $, and that's a very common alias for jQuery. Right? So you'll see a lot of these $sign all over the place. Right? It's just an alias for the jQuery function. Everybody okay? So if I refresh, this still works. Although removing is kind of boring because you don't see anything. Not only can you remove things, you can also add things. Right? So for instance, you can really grab anything on the DOM. You can even grab this div over here. Let's grab this div. So grab the div, and you can add stuff. You can append. Now you can append to the div. So first you're removing all the h1s, and now we're going to add a new h2. So we remove the H1, the hello, welcome to jQuery, hello world. Okay, so if we refresh, notice that it removed the welcome, right, and then added the hello world in there. Okay, notice that we are dynamically manipulating the DOM here, right, from JavaScript, right, as opposed to doing dynamic stuff on the HTML. Notice that the HTML has absolutely no idea that it's being modified. Okay, as opposed to Angular. In Angular, you do all the HTML manipulation in HTML, right? Here, we're doing it in JavaScript. Again, jQuery came much earlier than Angular, and it allows you to manipulate the DOM programmatically from JavaScript. We can add we can create brand new elements. For instance, I can create a UL. I can, out of thin air, I can create a UL element, right? Oh, sorry. There we go. I can grab and create a brand new UL element. I haven't added it yet. Okay, it's not in the DOM yet. To add things to the DOM, I would need to use the append. Append adds to the DOM. Over here, I'm just creating it. I've created a DOM element, but I haven't yet added it to the parent DOM, right? I've only stored it in the local variable UL. Yes? Okay. I can create several LIs, right? I can say var L is equal to 0, L less than 10, and L plus plus. And then I can create any number of LIs. So let's create one LI. There it is. I've created an LI dynamically, and maybe I can append it. I can say item, and then add L as part of the HTML. Okay, so that's proper HTML. Yes, that's all proper HTML. Now that I have the LI, I can append it to the UL. So to the UL, I'm appending a whole bunch of LIs. So you can imagine this in your head, right? You know, one UL, and then I'm appending several LIs to this UL. So I'm programmatically generating this UL and LI out of thin air. And at the very last thing that I would do is I can append it to the div. I can grab the div and then append the UL I've just created. Yes? Right? If I render this, notice that I have those line items that I've created dynamically onto the DOM. Yes? Here? Right here? Oh, the UL? No. So this it knows that it's creating a DOM object. The pointy brackets is only for our understanding that this is a UL element that I'm creating, is to be able to distinguish it between this. Notice that this is a div. Here I am doing a read operation of something that is already in the DOM. Whereas here, because it has the pointy brackets, means I am creating a brand new DOM element. Now that I have the DOM element, I don't really need the pointy brackets. It's in memory, right? And it knows that it will append to this object, this hierarchical object, right? Actually, this over here is very error prone, right? Notice that I have to remember to close it, right? So a better way to rewrite this would be to, I'm going to comment that out. A better way to write that is to just create the LI. Just create the LI. And then you can append item, right? Append text item. and then do L. Right? That would do the same thing. Right? It's a little less error prone, because over here, whenever you try to generate one language from another language, it's very error prone. Right? I don't know if anybody did servlets way back when from Java, right? Trying to generate HTML, it was a nightmare. Okay, when you try to generate one language from another language, it's just very, very easy to make a mistake, right? So that's why more modern APIs, more modern libraries try to. If you're going to do things with HTML, it's better you do it inside HTML. If you're going to do JavaScript side, just do objects, right? It's not a good thing to try and cross-breed these languages, right? It's better to do the things where they belong. Is everybody okay with this? Right? We could implement. I mean, we could do the whole thing that we did just 2 seconds ago with the movie API right here in jQuery, right? So let's play around with that just a little bit. So, for instance, let's copy this, right? And we'll say this OMDB. And in OMDB, let's say here OMDB API, and this might be OMDB JavaScript, which doesn't exist. Let's create it here. Let's create JavaScript omdb.js. OMDB. And we're going to do here a little bit of what we were doing earlier and try to contrast how would Angular and jQuery work together, right? So let's do our work here, and we'll do that in the next video.